Welcome to Blackfluencers. Today, live from Geneva at the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, interviewing the leaders shaping our future. So welcome again to another episode of Blackfluencers. Today is day 3 here at the Permanent Forum, and I have the honor to interview Gaynel Curry.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so for those that might not know you yet, maybe you can just introduce yourself briefly. Who are you and why are you attending the Permanent Forum?
Good. So I am Gaynel Curry, and I am from the Bahamas originally. And I'm living back there now. But I represent the Bahamas and CARICOM, the Caribbean community, on the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. So I am now, as of this session, the 5th session, I am now the chair of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. So I'm here for the session, and I'm here to chair it, so I'm so happy, yeah.
Probably for the audience that doesn't understand what it means to be the chair, what are the new duties as a chairholder?
Yes, as the chair, you're leading, so to speak, the session of the Permanent Forum. We meet once a year for 4 days according to our mandate, and during that session we invite civil society, governments, private sector, youth to come and join us to see the Permanent Forum as a platform where they can speak about their issues, their concerns, their human rights, their lives, their livelihoods, all of it we talk about. And so I am chairing that session and managing that whole process. So it is a process that involves somewhat up to 1,000 participants, and we can have easily up to 80 side events and activities going on. So sort of overseeing all of that is what I do. And in the context of our everyday work with the Permanent Forum, I wouldn't say that I lead, but I guide or support, if you put it that way, the work there with my colleagues. We're all experts in our own right, which is why I won't say that I'm their leader. I more or less convene, if you will, and coordinate a little bit how we do the work together as a group of experts. There are 10 experts on the forum from different regions of the world, and there's geographical representation. So that is really very important. Also, there's gender representation, and I have to say that the women on the committee have been quite dynamic, including the men, but I'm calling on the women because we've had 2 exceptionally good female leaders, Epsi Campbell-Barr and Dr. Junsuma, and we've just had Martin Kimani, not to leave the man out, as our leader, as our chair, I would say. And so I think it's just been a dynamic opportunity for me personally to be part of this process and to work with so many phenomenal people. And they're all brilliant, I have to say. They keep me on my game. I have to stay, I'm like, okay, Gaynel, you have to stay on your game, because it's so dynamic. People are so engaged and motivated by this issue. For me, it's personal, right, as well. And I think for all of us members, the 10 of us, it's very personal why we are here. Because we believe fundamentally in equality. I believe in equality, racial equality, gender equality, economic equality for all people and all peoples. And so I feel I'm really placed in the right spot to promote that message. And I always speak about, doing this in memory of my enslaved ancestors, in memory of my, recently passed ancestors, and also for us, and for my daughter, and hopefully for her children yet unborn. So it is about dignity, rights, respect, belonging, and feeling that you belong without an apology or an explanation. You just are who you are as a Black person, and I love that, and I want to be able to promote that for everyone.
I think that sums it up so great. This year we saw a focus on reparations, but also on the youth. As someone that attended several sessions already, maybe you can give a little retro perspective. What you think the Permanent Forum already achieved throughout the last years, and what are probably also issues that we can still embrace in the future that maybe didn't have enough space already.
Yeah, I think the Permanent Forum itself is a success of the first International Decade on People of African Descent. And so it came around sort of as we were wrapping up that first decade. But what I think we were able to do is to center the discussion around reparations. And reparations for enslavement, for colonialism, for systemic racism that we continue to face, the legacies of enslavement that remain with us today. And the Permanent Forum has, in all of its sessions, all of them, all 5, dealt with the issue of reparations because we think that is important. I will say to you that I arrived in the UN many years ago, very young and fresh and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to work. I worked at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights for 24 years. And in those years, I will say that I kept hoping to see more of a discussion on reparations in those spaces in the Security Council. I also was in New York for a number of years as the gender advisor, also hoping to see more of a movement on the agenda with respect to anti-racist, anti-black racism and systemic racism, and on reparations itself. I will say that the big push came with George Floyd. Sorry that someone died, for the world to say this is something that we have to do. Hey, people, you know. And I think at that point we begin to see a bit of a movement on this issue, but we came on the stage as the Permanent Forum right around that time, or shortly thereafter. So we took up that mantle and ran with it. Reparations are important, and we decided very early on in the game that as a committee of 10, a membership of 10, we were going to prioritize a couple of issues. We have to prioritize, according to our mandate, the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, the Decade on People of African Descent, the development of a declaration on the human rights of people of African descent, which we're working on with the Intergovernmental Working Group, and of course data. I just came from a session on data, and why it is important, because we are invisible in global data. And so we need to know who we're talking about when we're speaking about reparations. Where are black people? Where do they live? What are their realities, right? And so we have decided through this reparation agenda to try to do just that, identify where they are, speak with them, go to their communities. So in addition to meeting during our annual sessions here in Geneva and in New York, we have gone out and we've partnered with various civil society, and also some governments have supported us, because I will say, for the cameras as well, the budget needs to improve. Resources to the Permanent Forum are inadequate, and we need to do more. We can do better. And so we went out to communities. We were in Barbados, and we had consultations with several hundred civil society from around the region. What do you want? What is important to you? We went to Colombia after that, and that was the same thing we did for Colombia and Central America, and we had excellent input from hundreds of civil society members. Then we went to Brazil, and we did exactly the same thing. And wanting to prioritize, Brazil as well, because we know that Brazil has the largest black population outside of Africa.
That almost nobody knows.
Nobody knows, and we don't see them enough. And they're intelligent and strong and beautiful and courageous, and the work that they do, they're so talented, the Brazilians. And so we have to say that we wanted to go there to hear directly from them, and it was an excellent discussion. Each of those spaces, and finally, before I go on to tell you what the summation of all of that is, we went to Canada, invited by Black civil society in Canada. And that's another dynamic group. They're here at the forum at this 5th session in large numbers from across Canada. And I'm so happy that when we went to Canada, we went to different spaces. We were in Halifax, we were in Toronto, and we were in Ottawa. And we met at university levels, we met with civil society and with government, and the support is tremendous. They're encouraging that. In all of those spaces where we've had those consultations, and we've done consultations online and individually, I've been in several spaces as well as some of my colleagues, we have heard consistently the issues of reparations. Reparations are important because we believe that there has to be accountability, right? And we want to ground this in law as well, because at the end of the day, when we talk about issues around DEI and others, yeah, people can decide tomorrow that they don't want to do that anymore. But when we stick to the law, which is non-discrimination based on race, which is accountability for infractions, that's the law. And so that's what we want to stay with. That's why reparations is important to us. First, you have to say what happened. You have to tell the story, and it's about us telling our stories for ourselves. It is about us
having agency.
Exactly, having agency and not having this revisionist history going on, right? As if the transatlantic trafficking of Africans was a cruise. It was not. It was terrible. And people's lives for 400 years were terrible. They had really miserable lives, many of them, and they continue to face systemic racism. So we're saying, let's ground this thing in what it ought to be. It ought to be about rights. We want to keep it at the UN to continue that focus. As I said, when I arrived, many years ago to the UN, there was no discussion around these issues of reparations. In fact, every discussion on reparations, like, shh, don't mention that word, that our word. And now I'm so happy, I hear people speaking about it. The High Commissioner has said the word, the Secretary General has said the word, and most recently we had the Ghanaians lead the resolution, which talked about, chattel enslavement in the transatlantic. Trafficking of Africans was the worst crime against humanity. We had a chance to be involved in that as well, and to be, in the background working a little bit on that, and that's really encouraging to see that it was so successful. And I think that I told someone, I feel a geopolitical shift on these issues with respect to Black people. The discussion is changing, and I believe that the discussion that originated in the Permanent Forum over the last 4 years has helped that agenda to have its global status. I really do believe that, and because we've invited people from all over to speak about this issue, and so we're pleased. We're going to be continuing to encourage this discussion around reparations at all levels. We're hoping that it will continue, and that Ghana and others will continue to lead it. We know that the African Union has already placed it high on its agenda for the next 10 years. We know the CARICOM, the Caribbean community, has always had it on the agenda. And we were the first one to come up in the Caribbean to come up with a 10-point plan, what reparations ought to look like. And we're not talking about a transfer of cash today and tomorrow. We're talking about something that we know will take some time, and we know that we need to that may mean different things to different people. All right, so we need to decide at the community levels. We're wanting to say to people, discuss what that means to you. Across the Caribbean, we have committees in every Caribbean country looking at what does it mean to us. For an example, we have a very dynamic chair of our committee on reparations, and she's always asking that question, what would reparations look like for the Bahamas? Right? And that may differ from what it might look like in Guyana or Jamaica, right? Or for those in the wider diaspora in Brazil, for an example. So just to say that this is something that's very important to us, and it's likely it will be on the agenda on our agenda for some time, until we begin to see, and there has been some progress. We've seen some apologies coming in from some spaces. I know the Netherlands has done that, and there are individual families who were enriched by enslavement that are saying, how can I support, how can I help, how can I give back? And that's happening in different spaces, in Jamaica and a few other places, St. Lucia, I think. But just to say that I think it's really important, Grenada, not St. Lucia, Grenada. So I think it's important that we continue to have these discussions
and push that
agenda. I keep saying, if we try to push everything, we go nowhere. But let's try to look at one or two, maximum 3 key issues that we want to try to move, that will move the needle in the agenda in a positive way for people of African descent.
So I will have one last question, because I look at the time and I know you have to go in.
Yes.
Just in one short sentence, the importance of the youth. What is your vision or your wish for the future, and why should they attend? Why are they so important in this space?
Yeah, I believe the youth are crucial. You know, we had a discussion as to whether we should have a session just on youth. Maybe we should talk about, I'm like, no, we need to speak about youth. One of the things we saw very early on when we started our work is that the average age in the room was a little bit, you know, not a little bit beyond youth. So we were saying, this agenda is not entirely for us. This agenda is for youth. And that they must be well equipped, well prepared, and ready to move it forward. And I believe that they are, right? They are ready, but we have to create that space for them. And this is what we're hoping to do today at the Permanent Forum. We can have a special session on youth. And I hope this is beginning of something big, a youth movement globally for people of for youth of African descent. I will say one thing, one final point on this. And it's not targeting anyone and saying anything negative about anyone, but just stating some facts. The United Kingdom was an enslaver. With the country that country had a lot of enslavers involved in the whole trafficking movement and so forth. And they ended the slave trade early, which was fantastic. I think early. I think it was maybe 1807 or something like that, a little bit earlier than the actual emancipation. Emancipation was 1838 for us. But you think about that, from 1838, they began paying reparations, if you will, for damages or loss of property, if you will, to the enslavers. From 1838. They finished that whole process in 2015.
Wow.
So when we talk about it being for the future, we have to recognize that it's not even about the youth of today necessarily. It may be about your grandchildren.
We talk about the next 100 years.
Exactly. So it may take another 100 years for this to all unravel, but we need youth to be fully ready, fully equipped, and ready to move this agenda forward and to walk alongside us. You know, older persons, we're not old yet, but older, more mature, more advanced, to walk alongside us, to take this mantle and to be able to carry it. I always say that, you know, and I hate to use military analogies, but, you know, we need foot soldiers equally as generals. We need everybody to win this battle, because it is a battle.
Yes.
It's a fight for accountability, a fight for justice, and it's a fight for, yes, reparatory justice, it's a fight for racial justice, gender justice, economic justice. We don't talk about that enough, because the wealth has not come to our communities in the way it should have, but we built wealth for others. So we want youth to be a part of that, to take the mantle. It is theirs, they're ready now, the power is with them now, and I encourage them to take it forward.